to my radio station. No, I'm just kidding. Today's video is on Alastor's radio staff. If you haven't seen Hazbin Hotel, then I definitely urge you to. For anyone who doesn't know, Alastor is a radio demon who always sounds like he's talking through the radio, most of the time, kind of like this. I thought it would be a really cool idea to show my love for Hazbin Hotel by making Alastor's radio staff. So I wasn't sure if this video is going to end up being more of a tutorial, more of a build log kind of thing, so it's kind of a bit of both, and the reason for that is because I really didn't give myself enough time to establish how I was going to film it or present it, and as I keep saying, it is just me doing this, so when I'm filming I'm also trying to work out or problem solve all the things that happen when you're actually making a prop. And because Alastor's staff was so simple, I decided that I would make it more complicated for myself, even though I gave myself exactly the same amount of time. I decided to make it have a voice changer. With that being said, I'm now going to show you exactly how I just made this prop.
The best, smallest chip I could find on Google was this one. I didn't give myself too much time to research, so don't quote me on this. This kit comes with everything you need except for the speaker and a battery. I then soldered all the pieces onto the circuit board, following the instructions that they came with. Then I sent over that blueprint and scaled it into Fusion 360 and began modelling. If you don't want to do this yourself, you'll be able to buy this 3D file on my Etsy at a later date. I'll make sure to put a link and a description of all the things I've used today in this video. Then I printed all the parts using standard PLA. I'm using an Ender 3 Max and a regular Ender 3. The files can be used for any build plates of this size and above. I glued all the staff pole pieces together with a 3mm carbon fibre glass pole as the centre support. When gluing PLA, my favourite glue is this 2-part epoxy glue, seen here. Once the glue is set, I then cut off the very bottom here so that it's flush, and the top at about 3.7cm. You don't need a bandsaw, you can use a small hacksaw instead, but do wear a mask and gloves. Then, because I didn't give myself much time, I coated it in this toxic resin coating, which is great when used correctly. However, it's very expensive. If you do have time, skip this step. You'll just need to sand more. I just want to point out here that a lot of chemicals used in cosplay actually do require a high-grade PPE. This is one of those products that demand that. Still wearing PPE, I use spray putty to do a base layer on all the pieces in my true gremlin form. Wearing a dust mask and gloves, start sanding from 100 grit on all the pieces. Then, out of nowhere, this bird decided it wanted to land on my shoulder briefly and give me the jump scare of a lifetime. I hadn't fed them that day, so I wonder if it's because of that. Anyways, I continued sanding from 100 to 150 to 120, and then from 400 to 800 until finally 1000. Then, using a black acrylic spray paint, I based the pieces that needed to be black in this colour, although I don't recommend this black spray paint brand I'm using. The layer coverage is questionable. Then I sprayed the red on the pieces that needed it. Then I resprayed this part because I forgot it changed from the pilot episode, from red to black. Then, because this part has two colours, I masked off the correct colour once it was dry, which here was black, and I used low tack masking tape. Then, to force some interesting shadows, I airbrushed this onto some areas of the red and gave the big piece a gradient fade. Then I hand painted this part using black acrylic. After, I carefully removed the tape. Then I used spray gloss on all of the pieces. Then using tiny 3mm magnets, I glued 3 on each side. They can be very tricky to get in, so I carefully squished them lightly with some pliers. Then I pulled the speaker wires through and glued it into place with superglue. Once I got the volume I was happy with, that gave no feedback, I carefully removed the dial, being sure not to turn it. Then I carefully lined up the chip with the screw holes. I then very carefully screwed in the chip to the microphone, making sure the battery remained behind the chip. I fed the switch wires through, making sure the middle one stayed marked, and then I screwed them in. I then began assembling some parts with glue, and then soldered all the remaining wires together correctly, and covered the solder with electrical tape. I glued the rest of the parts together. Remember that the white part is actually screwed in and you only need to turn it once. Now for the reveal.
Salutations! It's good to be back on the air. Okay, so that is exactly how I made this prop, and I will now tell you the things that maybe I should have thought about if I had more than 3 days. And that is, I wanted this staff to be exactly the same dimensions as the probably rather fast first images of the reworked version of Alastor. And in some of those, you can see that it starts thick here, or thicker here, and then it becomes very thin at the bottom. Because of that, I had to have a carbon fibre pole in the middle for support. But it being this thin, this is 5mm at this point here and only 10 at the top here, you do get some sort of flex, which while it remains rather strong, I don't know if it looks that good sometimes when it's wobbling around. The other thing is I was extremely limited by the microchip, and it was extremely limiting because it's kind of made to be a practice board, probably for children and, you know, people who are just starting out of electronics, which makes this really good for someone who's a beginner. But it really just means that there are a lot of things that you can't control. I probably could have modded it, but I really didn't give myself enough time to even think about that. So with that being said, the things I found that could be slightly annoying are that you have to repress these buttons into the exact pitch every single time you turn it on. Now there are different settings on here and you can definitely play around and find the one which works best for you, but I would encourage you to do that before you finish building the prop, because some of these pitches just really don't like to work with this staff. And what I mean by that is if you turn it up to a high pitch, something to do with the vibrations is conducting down to the speaker and giving a lot of feedback, which is both damaging to the speaker and to my ears. So I really had to only stick within a certain pitch that I liked and it liked. And I can show you that now, but I might edit this out because it is quite horrendous. So when you turn it on, it's in its robot form. Now the robot form is probably the most gentle. It likes this one the most. It's probably why they had it as the default. But that doesn't sound like Alastor. So I normally press pitch down, pitch up 2 or 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Now this is what I get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 1 The problem is, I still think that's quite a little bit too demonic, and you can maybe get around it by just talking a bit higher. But I don't know, I'm not really an actor, so I'm not very good at that. So ideally I'd like to have it one more up, but watch what happens. Now you can completely cancel that out by just turning it down again. So that's what I mean by choosing the pitch before you put the prop together, because I noticed as I was doing that, suddenly it didn't like certain things. It didn't like certain pitches with this shape. I was changing the shapes and it was then liking it, so I really had to do that at the end. But that being said, this is the cheapest, smallest microchip that comes with everything you need apart from the battery to create a voice changer. I've seen a lot of voice changers online, some of you might be aware, that are rather large and they probably sound a lot better. I know a lot of Star Wars people and droids makers use them because they sound really good for Star Wars and stuff like that. But the problem with them is they need a lot of space. This really is the smallest one I could find in the time that I gave myself, which maybe is my own problem. But all in all, I think this is a really discreet, really fun prop to have if you plan to cosplay Alastor, or if you just wanted something to have around. Maybe you could just print it without any of the electronics. That would make it a lot cheaper. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and my rambling at the end, I kind of wanted to express the truth to some brush props, and this being one of them. Now, if I had more time, and that's a very famous thing for most artists, then I would have done a lot more different. At the moment I have this screwing in and out, which I absolutely love, because again, I always expect any electronics to at some point have some technical issues. It's actually becoming a lot less frequent for me personally, but it does happen, even if it's just you need to change the battery, which, because it's such a small compact thing, that is this one's problem. And changing the batteries sometimes can tug wires and stuff like that. If you can hear tippy tappies, that's cool. But all in all, I am very proud of myself for this prop, just because of how small and compact it is. And with that being said, there's still a lot going on inside that is, I think, is very nicely concealed, and also it remains very strong. So that's it for this video, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you in next month's video. Bye bye! Dear, if I wanted to hurt anyone here, I would have done it right.